There are, I believe, two important words to think about today. They are inclusivity and diversity. In the education world, the employment world, and in our church life, any new policies need to be evaluated for both of them. We need to ask, are these policies promoting inclusivity and diversity? That's to say, are our actions doing enough to make sure that people of all sorts and types, women, men, those with small children or other caring responsibilities, disabled people, those whose lifestyle choices are different, or those of different racial backgrounds, we need to make sure that all are fully included. Today's gospel, I believe, challenges us to think about the radical inclusivity and diversity of the love of God as revealed in Jesus' teaching, his death, and his resurrection. The story we heard comes in a sequence of encounters in which the brand new church finds that the message of Jesus is not only for the Jewish people who were his first followers. Before this story, Philip has been working with two other followers of Jesus, Peter and John, spreading the good news of Jesus in the villages in Samaria. If you remember the story of Jesus meeting the Samaritan woman, you recall that Jews and Samaritans were traditional enemies. That was the case from Old Testament times onwards, because the Jews regarded the Samaritans as basically foreigners. The Samaritans regarded themselves as true Jews and accepted the first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible, but not the rest. When the Samaritans offered to help rebuild the temple at Jerusalem, the Jews turned down the offer. So can you believe it? After the work of Peter and John and Philip, now some of the Samaritans are part of this new Jesus movement. Already there is some serious inclusivity and diversity happening here. Philip is then told to go on the road that leaves Jerusalem to the south, where he encounters the eunuch. Who is this man? Well, across human history, it has been common practice in societies around the globe to use surgical castration for some senior royal officials. Why? Because not being able to reproduce meant that there was no danger of them wanting to set up on their own descendants in opposition to the royals they served. Without their own family to promote, they were thought to be more trustworthy, more loyal. I've seen it argued that the eunuch here is just a job title, like Chamberlain, rather than a description which would mean that the Ethiopian holds one of these trusted positions, but has intact organs. But I believe that seems really unlikely, because he's also described as a court official. And if eunuch already told us his job, we wouldn't have needed that extra label. There is another Ethiopian eunuch in the Bible, Ebed-Melech, the Ethiopian, a eunuch in the king's house, and he features in the book of Jeremiah, where he is the person who helps this prophet to escape when he has been thrown down a well because nobody likes his prophecies. In earlier translations, this eunuch we've heard about works for Queen Kadek of Ethiopia. In more accurate translations, like we've used today, he is a court official of the Kandake, Queen of the Ethiopians, and he was in charge of her entire treasury. Kandake is definitely a title. There's clearly a diversity moment happening here, because the eunuch is almost certainly black. The Greek word Ethiopia actually means with a burnt face. The dark complexion is summarized in the name. The place he is from isn't where we think of as Ethiopia, but is probably the kingdom of Cush, south of Egypt, and once ruled by it in now what is Sudan. It was a very rich kingdom with a 1,000-year history. This man has just been to Jerusalem. We don't know why. Financial business for the Queen, or perhaps a personal trip. When we meet him on his return journey, he is reading the work of the prophet Isaiah. Did he buy this in Jerusalem? Is it new to him? Or is it something that he has been reading for a while? In the ancient world, people normally read out loud, so as Philip approached, he'd know precisely what the Ethiopian eunuch was reading. It's from the Hebrew Bible. So, what was this man's own faith? Later in history, there were Jewish settlers in what is now Ethiopia, but there's no evidence for this during New Testament times. Martin Luther reckoned he was a Gentile, a non-Jew. John Wesley thought he was somebody who'd already converted to Judaism. Was he someone on the fringe of Judaism, but not yet converted? Or did he follow the religion of his region, which was similar to that of Egypt, with a strong focus on the afterlife? There's an interesting exclusion point here. The Ethiopian wouldn't be allowed in the Jerusalem temple. Jewish holy law strictly forbids a eunuch from entering the assembly of the Lord. So did the eunuch go to Jerusalem to worship, despite the fact that he'd been turned away by the religious establishment? Or was he there for state business? Whatever the case, he is interested in Jewish sacred texts because he is reading Isaiah. Specifically, he is reading Isaiah 53, which many of us will know because so much of it features in Handel's Messiah. All we like sheep have gone astray, and he was despised and rejected by others, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. So here we have the eunuch, a powerful man who is physically impotent, reading the prophecies about Jesus in whom God emptied out his power in order to become the suffering servant, the victim. But he hasn't yet got to the best part of Isaiah for him. Chapter 56, "Do not let the foreigner join to the Lord say, 'The Lord will surely separate me from his people.' And do not let the eunuch say, 'I am just a dry tree.' The foreigner, the eunuch, and this man is both. For thus says the Lord, to the eunuchs who keep my Sabbaths, who choose the things that please me, and hold fast to my covenant, I will give in my house and within my walls a monument and a name better than sons and daughters. I will give them an everlasting name." This section of Isaiah is very much prefiguring the expansion of the church from the original Jewish followers of Jesus to the rest of the world. "Thus says the Lord God, who gathers the outcasts of Israel, I will gather others to them, besides those already gathered." Radical inclusivity, foreigners and eunuchs. So what is this story about? What is it doing in the Bible? I dare say, like many of you, I was brought up to see this as a story about evangelism, about how the good news is best shared person to person. Philip was the hero, and the eunuch was the person he was converting. But now I am not so sure. This seems to be quite a journey they take together, discussing the Bible and what it means, talking about who Jesus was. It recalls to me the road to Emmaus, when Jesus himself came and walked with his disciples, explaining the Bible to them. Are Philip and the eunuch learning from each other here? And does Philip learn that the way of Jesus is even more inclusive than he thought? In a few weeks' time, we will have our church meeting. Perhaps the story of the Ethiopian eunuch is a reminder to us to look for those who are not like us in colour or class or gender identity or sexuality. But perhaps it is also a reminder that those who are not like us may already be far nearer to God than we are. Inclusion suggests that we, who are already the powerful ones, generously make sure that we allow others to join us. What we see in this story of Philip and the Ethiopian eunuch is the excluded foreigner who doesn't fit into binary categories of male and female, whose sexuality is not going to lead to sons and daughters, inviting Philip to join him. Yes, he invited Philip to get in and sit beside him. I'm sure that at our church meeting in a few weeks' time, we will focus on our buildings and what we do in them, and rightly so. I believe that we also need to think about the story of Philip and the Ethiopian eunuch, as it reminds us that we also need to be open to invitations to meet people on their territory. Maybe, just maybe, we need to get out more. Amen.